Labyrinth, a novel based on the Jim Henson film, by ACH Smith, read by Rose in the Library. It took her some time to recover. Ludo watched over her anxiously. When she stood up, sniffed, and gave him a small smile, he said, "Ludo, glad." "Sarah, glad," she answered, and ruffled his head. There was nothing for it but to try the other door. She walked across to it, picking up the ring. "I'm sorry," she said, and pushed the ring against the knocker's lips. He pursed his mouth and resisted her. "Oh, come on," she said, and tried again. The knocker frowned and squeezed his lips together even more tightly. Then she had an idea. With her finger and her thumb, she squeezed the knocker's nose. He held out a while, scowling more and more fiercely, but in the end he had to open his mouth for breath. "Damn!" he gasped. In a flash, she had the ring back in his mouth and knocked on the door. He was protesting. "Sorry," Sarah said. "I had to do it." "That's all right," the first knocker told her. "He's used to it." The door swung open to reveal a forbidding forest. On this side of the wall they were in sunshine, but through the doorway was a dismal and brooding prospect. Ludo was growling and trying to draw back, but Sarah was not going in without him this time. "Come on," she said, and braced herself. "There's no other way we can go, except back where we came from, and I'm not doing that." She stepped through the doorway and waited for Ludo to join her. He followed her, reluctantly. The door swung shut of its own accord, with a resounding thud. The echo lasted a long time. Sarah shivered. The sky was the color of cast iron, and the forest plants looked shriveled, as though the sun had never shone on them since their first day on earth. She felt terribly dispirited after just a minute in this place, and she looked for Ludo to hearten her. His expression was unhappier than her own. "Oh, come on, Ludo," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "Fancy a great thing like you being scared." Ludo shook his head. "Not good." She shrugged with a heavy heart, turned around again, and wondered which way to go. A path ran in front of her, into the forest. But how could anyone take it for granted that a path was the way you wanted to go? "I don't even know which way the castle is," she said. Again she looked at Ludo, hoping that from his height he would be able to see it. But he had his head sunk resolutely on his chest and took no notice. She tried standing on tiptoe. That was no good. Nothing was any good. She felt a tear of despair rim her eye and brushed it irritably away. "There's nothing to be scared of," she said, and felt she had to take some initiative, if only to persuade Ludo to buck up. She peered up into the branches of a tree. What she did not see, behind her, was that the earth opened up beneath Ludo and swallowed him into a great hole. He had no time to utter more than the first tremor of a roar before the earth closed again above his head. "Maybe I could climb up there," Sarah was saying. "Then I must be able to see the way to the castle." She took hold of the lowest branch and put her weight on it. It snapped off in her hand with a dry crack like china, and before she could register that it was dead, the whole tree collapsed. Lying before her, she saw a pile not of dead wood but of bones. The thing she was holding was a bone. With a shudder, she threw it away. There was a dry, rustling noise going on all around, and in dismay she saw the whole forest was collapsing, like a series of dinosaur skeletons. One bone tree after the other clattered to the ground, each bringing down the next, like dominoes, until the entire landscape had been reduced to heaps of bones, all jumbled together. And Sarah knew it was all her fault, the destruction of this delicate balance. She had snapped off the branch. It was too much to bear. She burst out weeping and sank to the ground. She couldn't do anything right. It was all hopeless, quite hopeless. She cried and cried, with her hands over her face. Eventually, she looked to see if Ludo was crying too. "Ludo?" She looked all around her. He wasn't there. Distractedly, and she inspected the bones on the ground to see if any had ginger fur on them. "Ludo?" She rushed around the spot where the two of them had been, looking in a panic for any sign of him. She saw none. Above, the sky had grown even darker and more miserable. "Ludo!" she screamed, feeling utterly alone in this desolate bonescape. "Where are you? What's going on?" She ran, to get away, anywhere. If she stayed there, she would be Bones herself. She ran through the heaps of bones and into another part of the forest, also grim. Huge, gnarled roots stretched across the path. The trees had trunks like tight fists. Fallen branches and dead leaves covered the earth. Here and there, a brief vista between the trees offered a way on, but along each one that she took, cobwebs clothed her face. From clumps of ferns, clouds of dark moths flitted up at her. "What's going on?" she whimpered as she ran. The forest got darker as she ran deeper into it. She stumbled into a glade above which the trees were so close that she could not see her feet in the darkness. Still she ran, until a terrifying, bright, savage figure leapt out in front of her. "Yeah!" it screeched. "What's going on?" Sarah's mouth and eyes formed circles. She screamed.